The subcommittee will come to order. Our discussion this morning focuses on the activities of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, commonly referred to as ICANN. Since 1998, ICANN has managed the designation and allocation of Internet domain names and addresses under various contractual arrangements with the United States Department of Commerce. The original Memorandum of Understanding that was signed in November of 1998 has been renewed on several occasions, most recently as a joint project agreement, which is now scheduled to expire on September 30th of this year. One matter upon which we will focus this morning is whether Department of Commerce oversight should be retained through renewal of that agreement, or in the alternative, whether the time has come for that oversight to be relinquished and for ICANN to operate after September 30th without supervision with respect to the allocation and designation of Internet domain names and addresses and associated functions. It should be noted that under a separate contract which is not scheduled to expire, the Department of Commerce has conferred upon ICANN the management of the master files of the domain name system, generally known as the root zone files. Under that non-expiring contract, ICANN also manages and coordinates the allocation of IP addresses. In considering whether the expiring contract should be renewed or should expire without renewal, key questions are whether ICANN's decision-making is sufficiently transparent or whether improvements are needed, and whether under its existing structure and practices, ICANN is sufficiently accountable to Internet stakeholders and the global community of Internet users. I'm sure that today's witnesses and members of this panel will have a number of views to express, and the members will have questions about those key matters. A second focus of today's hearing is on ICANN's proposal to introduce new generic top-level domains which could involve descriptions of various types of activities, locations, brands, or trademark names. It's suggested that the creation of new top-level domains would promote competition among registry operators of the TLDs and would enhance consumer choice. Among the concerns that have been raised about a proliferation of new TLDs is the cost to companies associated with protecting their brands if they have to purchase additional second-level domain registrations under the new top-level domains. Not only do they purchase their exact brand names as a common practice under the various TLDs, but they generally also purchase common misspellings of their brand names in order to protect the brand name itself. So a buffer area, in effect, is acquired around that brand name through the second-level TLDs. So as the number of top-level TLDs grows, the cost to companies to protect their brand names grows exponentially. Does the added competition and consumer choice that would arise from the new TLDs offset that cost as a matter of public policy? A key question for us to consider. Other questions relate to ICANN's capacity to manage all of the new top-level domains and assure the overall stability and security of the domain name system, and whether ICANN can assure that an adequate amount of competition would in fact arise in the bidding process for new TLDs. We will welcome our testimony this morning. We thank our witnesses for being with us and sharing their views on these very important subjects with regard to the future of Internet management and governance. And at this time, I'm pleased to recognize the ranking Republican on our subcommittee, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stearns.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. For more than a decade, ICANN has played a vital role in maintaining a stable and reliable Internet, and I think that's a very high achievement. ICANN has the critically important responsibility for managing the domain name system. The hierarchy of IP addresses and associated domain names that enable Internet users around the globe to communicate with each other. ICANN has succeeded, both because it has been a private sector-led effort, not controlled, for example, by the United Nations or any other government, and thanks to the advice, guidance, and engagement of the United States through a series of arrangements, including the Joint Projects Agreement. The key question before this committee is, will the expiration of the JPA in September put the stability and security of the Internet at risk? I have some concerns and want to hear from the panel on this matter. The JPA with the Department of Commerce has played an important role in ensuring that ICANN is accountable for its decision and conducts its mission in a manner that provides for stakeholders' participation. The JPA should be extended, and the NTIA is in the process of seeking public comment on this issue. One major question for this hearing is whether there is a need to renew the JPA when it expires and what the nature of U.S. engagement with ICANN would be in its absence. While it can never please all its stakeholders all the time, it needs appropriate governance mechanism that will ensure its openness and accountability. Apart from ICANN's agreement with the Department of Commerce, what other external mechanisms are in place today to simply safeguard that accountability? If there are none, or if there are insufficient controls, perhaps ICANN's ongoing relationship with the Department of Commerce should then continue. Ultimately, though, through the global Internet community, we'll need to develop an appropriate governance structure to ensure its accountability. One of its functions is to create generic top-level domains, or GTLDs, which is a unit of letters or words beyond the rightmost dot, such as .com or .gov or .net. Over the time, the number of GTLDs has expanded to 21. Last June, ICANN proposed to further expand the number of GTLDs. Under the proposal, which was put out for public comment and must be finalized and approved by the Board of Directors, new GTLDs could include the names of organizations, companies, locations, or additional generic words. However, before ICANN expands this list, it should address concerns about the proposed expansion and provide further opportunity for comments by all the stakeholders. In a letter to ICANN last December, NTIA raised a number of questions regarding the way in which it was proposed to administer the rollouts of these new GTLDs. Specifically, NTIA wondered whether it is prepared to implement measures to promote competition on registry prices, terms, and conditions, ensure the application process with respect to national and international laws, including intellectual property rights, enforce contract compliance, and design a rational fee structure. NTIA recommended that ICANN can resolve a number of these issues before expanding the GTLDs. My colleagues, trade holders are concerned that without sufficient protection for intellectual property rights, they will have to engage in costly defensive registration of domains that are identical or similar to their trademarks across GTLDs to prevent others from registering them or pursue costly and time-consuming administrative or legal processes against cyber squatters. I hope our witnesses will address these legitimate concerns also. Another and final point, that since ICANN is considered a not-for-profit organization, does a transparent mechanism exist to address any excess revenues? According to data from the Technology Policy Institute, its revenues have increased from $5 million in 2000 to over $60 million in 2009, while expenses have increased from under $3 million in 2000 to over $54 million in 2009. Thus, it will have a surplus of close to $7 million from FY 2009. ICANN's largest expense is personnel, accounting for close to $20 million of the $54 million. According to its annual report, it employs 100 staff members. Although salary information and administrative costs were not available, I hope witnesses today will address these issues on finance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stearns. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Doyle, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for holding this important hearing. I own a few domains, and I've benefited from the competition among domains and who I can buy them from. I believe that because the Internet is truly global, significant input from around the world is important to its governance, which is why it pains me to say that I hope that the Department of Commerce continues the JPA with ICANN and not relinquish control at this time. I'm afraid ICANN seems better at furthering its own interest than those of the millions of Internet users that it's supposed to look out for. My constituents are still receiving misleading solicitations that look like invoices from a registrar, despite a court injunction and despite FTC intervention. Why does ICANN allow them to continue to sell domain names? This is domain slamming, and it continues today. When ICANN attempted to curb the abuse of domain tasting, the 5-day window when purchased domains were able to be returned and refunded, their solution was to make their fee non-refundable. Well, that helped curb the abuse, but the money didn't go for consumer protection or coordination towards IPv6. It went to the general budget, executive compensation, and cushioning ICANN's $4.6 million stock market loss last year. If they can afford to lose that much money in the market, why are they collecting the fees from us in the first place? I'm glad to see witnesses talking about the GTLD issue today, which I have grave reservations. I fear that the primary beneficiary is not the consumer, who might suffer from increased confusion, or the businesses who would need to register new domains to defend their trademark across a near infinite number of top-level domains. On the other hand, it might act as a needed market-based solution to ensure that rates and fees for .com are kept low in this economic downturn. Small domain users like me and companies that need and use thousands of domain names to run their businesses, and the tens of millions of Internet users who place their trust in the Internet today need assurance that someone is looking out for them. I don't see it from ICANN. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle. The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a new administration. Everyone knows we have a new individual getting close to be confirmed in NTIA. We have a change in the administration at the ICANN. This is now not a time to make changes. I would be supportive of extending the joint project agreement. I look forward to the hearing, and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shimkus. The gentlelady from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Christensen, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for this hearing and for giving me yet another list of new acronyms to add to others that I'm still trying to haven't committed to memory, but I'm beginning to understand the concepts, and that's more important. We're here to review the progress ICANN has made and whether it's ready for the joint project agreement to expire on 9/30/09 and for the management of the DNS to transfer from the MOU with the U.S. government to the global community, whether it's fully able to meet its mandates and the goals of stability, competition, bottom-up coordination, security, and broad representation, as well as transparency. There seem to be many concerns that it's not ready, and we need to determine if this is just a fear of the risk that any change would bring, or whether there are legitimate concerns that still need to be addressed first, as some panelists will suggest. I'm particularly interested in the bottom-up coordination and, of course, security, as well as understanding whether the projected plans ICANN has are not only realistic but responsible, and whether or not they jeopardize stability and security. I want to applaud our chair and ranking member once again for the excellent oversight and yet another pressing issue, and look forward to the testimony that will be presented. Thank you, everyone, for being here and sharing your views with us on this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. The gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, is recognized for 2 minutes. She was here a moment ago. All right, we'll await her arrival at a later time. The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate you holding this hearing on what I believe could actually be a matter of national security. ICANN serves a very important role in being responsible for managing the domain name system, which, as you know, is the hierarchy of IP addresses and associated domain names that enable Internet users around the globe to communicate with each other. This interconnectedness that allows us to communicate with one another is the reason that ICANN should renew the joint project agreement or sign a similar agreement with the current when the current agreement expires later this year. The goals of the JPA should continue to work towards increasing ICANN's transparency, accountability, and openness while developing mechanisms and procedures to transition the domain name system functions to the private sector in a manner that promotes stability, security, competition, bottom-up coordination, and representation. Should a rogue nation get the chance to control the DNS, it is definite possibility that they could use it to harm the U.S. or to dismantle and interfere with our ability to communicate globally through the Internet. I would hope that my colleagues would join me in saying that, quite simply put, the United States government created the Internet and it needs to be in charge, as we could very well be vital to our nation's security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terry. The gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much for calling this interesting hearing on the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. I appreciate the witnesses' willingness to be here today to discuss these important business issues and consumer issues and how we continue to modernize the Internet. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Castor. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to say that I, too, join many of my colleagues hoping that the JPA can be extended in a timely fashion, and I look forward to being a partner in that. I believe that it will be certainly a bipartisan one as well. Since we have Ms. Alexander here, we have a pretty big date coming up on a little bit more than a week away here, and you may expect to have some questions on the transition to digital just to see where we are. I know a lot of Americans are concerned about that. It don't have quite the publicity we had back in February, but we all hope that it'll be a pretty smooth transition. We look forward to your thoughts about that as well. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Upton. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Matsui, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for calling today's hearing. I applaud your leadership in addressing this important issue. I'd also like to thank our panelists for being with us here this morning. As we all know, ICANN was created in 1998 to govern the allocation and designation of Internet domain names and addresses. Although certain responsibilities for the domain name system were transferred from the Department of Commerce to ICANN, the Department of Commerce continues to exercise limited oversight of ICANN through the Joint Project Agreement. Under this agreement, the Department of Commerce affirmed its policy goals of preserving the security and stability of the Internet domain name system. This agreement is now set to expire on September 30th of this year. While I understand some of the reasons that ICANN does not want to extend the JPA agreement, such as how the U.S. role is viewed abroad, now may not be the time to say that ICANN should be on its own. Just last year, NTIA initiated a review of the agreement and found that although ICANN has made progress in key areas concerning security and stability of the domain system, important work still remains. We must ensure the Internet domain system is transparent, accountable, and has a strong governance structure. Moving forward, I urge the administration to carefully consider its agreement in partnership with ICANN. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing today, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Matsui. Ms. Blackburn hasn't returned. The gentleman from the state of Washington, Mr. Inslee, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'll reserve. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Inslee. You will have 2 minutes of time added to your questioning period. The gentleman from California, Mr. McNerney, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an interesting and important hearing, so I'm looking forward to it. It's important to work together to ensure that we have a fair and transparent system, maintaining and improving the Internet in order to avoid potential difficulties. It's essential that we keep the Internet accessible and easily navigated to all, and I look forward to the testimony this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNerney. The gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshu, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all of the witnesses. Like any new organization, ICANN has gone through its share of growing pains. And since it was created 11 years ago, it has been a target for criticism among the global Internet community. I'll have some questions today about the operation and where you are right now, but I do think that progress has been made, and that and on the other hand, that many of the concerns I think have been appropriate, and ICANN continues to develop itself and to do the thorough oversight over the technical and administrative functions under its jurisdiction, and that's a plus. I think that you've been successful in introducing competition to both the retail and the wholesale domain name business, added a whole new host of Internet domains, and stepped in to ensure that the country code top-level domains are properly designated. I think the most important and heavily trafficked domains, .com and .net, are operated by VeriSign, a company headquartered in my district in Mountain View, California, and I know that Mr. Silva is here today, and I welcome him. VeriSign has maintained a 100% uptime for .com. It has never failed. That's something in and of itself, so to be congratulated for that. It's important to remember that ICANN was founded in response to growing concerns about U.S. Domination of the Internet. And today, I think many countries believe the U.S. continues to exert undue influence over ICANN and the administrative functions of the Internet. We can talk about that. But I understand the concerns about this whole issue of excessive U.S. control over Internet governance, but the alternative right now, I think, is clearly unacceptable. ICANN doesn't have the independent authority and the governance structure to prevent other governments from using power over the DNS to interfere with innovation, competition, and freedom of expression. So I look forward to the discussion and the questions that I will ask, as well as my colleagues, and welcome all of you here. And I thank the chairman for having you here today, because I think it's important that you are. Yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eshu. The gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do thank you for the hearing today, and for our witnesses, welcome. We are delighted that you are here with us. We do have multiple hearings going on this morning, so we are going to be jumping up and down and in and out, but please excuse us for that. Few international organizations quietly wield the power in the global community that ICANN currently wields. While most Americans have probably never heard of ICANN, it is this California-based organization, which is a nonprofit, that is responsible for the management and the assignment of virtually every IP address and domain name worldwide. Wow. That is the growing side of things. It is an enormous responsibility to be overseen by a non-governmental organization. That reason alone necessitates this committee's time and attention to provide proper oversight, notwithstanding the fact that our government's only functional tool for overseeing ICANN activity stems from the JPA. And that does expire on September 30th, which brings us to today. Now, there is a letter from Chairman Thrush, the January 25th letter, in which he states that ICANN does not believe it should answer directly to the U.S. government, and that the memorandum of understanding it signed in November 2008 is no longer necessary. And I'm quoting from that letter. Now, many disagree and believe that additional oversight, not less, is necessary to provide a check and balance regarding decisions made by an international organization comprised of unelected officials. The internet, and this is what is so interesting to me, and I think it's really exciting when you look at commerce and the growth of especially small business commerce. The internet consists of 174 million websites, 570 million computers, and more than 1.5 billion users. Coordination of this intricate web necessitates transparent decision-making, technical expertise, and even-handed governance. Only U.S.-sponsored oversight for a body tasked with overseeing the domain name and IP address system for which ICANN is responsible can ensure the Internet's continued viability and fairness as 21st century Internet architecture evolves. It is therefore imperative for the U.S. government to remain integrally linked to the organization, thereby securing the historic American role in the development and commercial governance of the Internet architecture. So we're looking forward to hearing from you and working with you. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blackburn. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell, Chairman Emeritus of the full committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your courtesy. I commend you for this hearing. It is very much needed. It is not a new issue. At issue today are a number of matters related to oversight of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. In particular, we will examine the pending expiration of the Joint Project Agreement, JPA, between National Telecommunications and Information Agency, NTIA, and ICANN. ICANN's proposed plans to expand the number of available generic top-level domains, GTLDs, and the future of ICANN's contract with VeriSign for registration of the .com top-level domain. Each of these issues requires a number of careful considerations and ample participations by all affected stockholders before any change in policy is either ratified or understood. I'm not satisfied that this has been the case with the matters I've just mentioned, and this committee has had troubles with these matters before. And I intend to ask such questions of our witnesses as will enable us to get very frank answers about all of them, and I urge my colleagues to do like. Before, however, engaging in a substantive dialogue with the witnesses today, I would like to note the following. First, with regard to the expiration of the JPA between NTIA and ICANN, I wish to reiterate my insistence that ICANN remains far from a model of effective and sustainable self-governance, and I hope they're listening to that comment. Legitimate concerns about the lack of fairness, transparency, and accountability in ICANN's functionings continue to be raised by stakeholders in the Internet community, particularly in a time of increased cyber attacks on the U.S. government and domestic businesses. I find it wholly unwise to reduce further the participation of the federal government in determining the course of Internet's future development. Similarly, and limited through the oversight NTI exercises over ICANN may be, given the recent observable effects of deregulation and inadequate oversight on the economy, I believe that here we have an analogy. The JPA between NTIA and ICANN should be extended. Second, concerning GTLDs, I consider ICANN's attention to the effect of dramatically increasing the number of available GTLDs on competition, pricing, and consumer choice clearly inadequate. Moreover, I have suspicions that expanding the number of top-level domains could in fact give rise to increased instances of fraud perpetrated on consumers and the practice of cyber squatting, an unhealthy and dangerous situation. Finally, I continue to maintain that ICANN's contract with VeriSign for the register of the .com domain is characterized by a deplorable lack of transparency. If this is not going to be a government undertaking and it's not going to be adequately regulated, it has to be transparent, which it clearly is not. In brief, I have grave misgivings about the wisdom of extending this contract after it expires in 2012, and I will expect this hearing to produce some answers as to whether or not that should be extended and whether or not it needs to have additional safeguards to assure that it is properly extended with proper transparency, or in the alternative, more regulation. Thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to a constructive discussion with our witnesses today and an answer to the questions which this committee has to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dingell. The gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Shadegg, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today. I want to welcome all of our witnesses, but I particularly want to welcome to Washington the GoDaddy Group and its representative, Christine Jones, whom I've known and worked with for many years. The GoDaddy Group plays an important role in the economy of Arizona. They are a key component of our business community, and they have, I think, great insight and perspective in this particular topic about which we're discussing today. I welcome Ms. Jones and look forward to her testimony along with that of the other witnesses. ICANN has played a vital role in the development of the Internet and has carried a huge burden, but has been adequately expressed here, and I will be brief in my remarks. There are certainly problems, and it is apparent that a great deal of work needs to be done. With the looming expiration of the Joint Project Agreement, it is clear that a plan must be put in place to ensure the security, stability, and viability of the Internet remains intact. I applaud the work of ICANN to date, but I believe there are areas, indeed significant areas, for improvement. Again, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for this hearing. I believe it's important that we learn more about how ICANN affects all of us, both the key players in the Internet world, but all Americans, all people around the world who use the Internet. And I'm interested in hearing how it affects the organizations that are represented here today. Again, I thank the witnesses and look forward to your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shadegg. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Weiner, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of hearing from the panel, I'll relinquish my time for opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiner.